My name is Emma Carter. I am 21. I live in a small apartment with a cat named Boots. I work 2 jobs. I study at night. I cook my own dinner. I send my mom money when I can. I try to be kind to people. I try to be quiet when the neighbors play loud music. I never liked being loud. I never liked trouble. Until that night. We were all at my grandpa's big house. The house smelled like old wood and warm bread. It had tall windows and a long dining table with brass candlesticks. I had not been to Grandpa's house in a long time. He lived far away now. He flew in from California for Christmas. He was always dressed well. He always smelled like cologne and fresh flowers. People called him Mr. Carter. He had a bright smile that made people listen. He had money. Everyone knew that. He did not brag. He just had a quiet way of making things happen. That night the table was full. My Aunt Sarah sat next to me. She wore a red dress and a small, sharp smile. My Uncle Mark laughed too loud and told a joke about a bad date. My mother, Lisa, tried to look calm. She kept glancing at me like she was measuring me with her eyes. My little cousin, Noah, was playing with a toy car under the table. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I kept it off. I wanted the night to be about family. Grandpa raised his glass. His voice was soft, but everyone grew quiet. He looked at me. The lights seemed to get brighter for a moment. He asked a normal question like he always did about school or work. Then, like a drop of cold water, he said the words that changed everything. At dinner, my rich grandpa asked, "Did you get the email about your trust fund?" I said no one ever told me I had one. His question spilled across the table like spilled wine. The room blinked. My aunt's fork paused in midair. My uncle's laughter stopped. Noah rolled his car into his shoe and looked up. My mother's face went white. My grandpa sat back in his chair with a small, satisfied look. He looked at me like a man who had just revealed a surprise that only he had been meant to know. I felt my ears go hot. My mouth felt dry. My hands were resting on the table, but they felt far away. I heard the sound of a clock in my head. I did not understand what he meant. Trust fund? Email? I had never been told I had one. No one had ever said anything about money waiting for me somewhere. I had never even thought about it. Emma, my mother said, but her voice was soft and thin. It did not sound like the mother who used to sing in the kitchen. It sounded like a person who had been caught off guard. Grandpa smiled slowly. "Yes, Emma. Did you get the email?" he asked again. His tone was gentle. It sounded like he was asking if I had remembered to water a plant. But his eyes were sharp. They looked like a question and a test mixed together. I swallowed. I shook my head. "No," I said. "No. No one ever told me I had one." You could have heard a pin drop. My aunt's jaw tightened. My uncle's smile froze. For a moment, the world outside the windows went very still. The light from the chandelier made little stars on the table. Boots the cat would have sat content on my lap if he had been there. But I felt nothing like content. I felt like a cloud that had been pushed aside. Then Grandpa laughed, the kind of laugh that sounds like a wind moving through trees. It was a small laugh, like someone who was pleased with a secret. "Well," he said, "I suppose that is the surprise." My heart beat fast. I did not like surprises about money. I like surprises like a small cake on my birthday. I like surprises like a friend showing up with soup when I was sick. I did not like surprises that made people look at me differently. I did not like secrets. There was a pause. My mother looked at Grandpa. Her hands trembled under the table. For a second, I thought she might say something like, "Grandpa, don't say things like that." But she did not. Instead, she smiled a little too quickly and reached for her wine glass. Her eyes were dry. She was holding a small paper napkin like it was a rope. My aunt cleared her throat. "Emma," she said, and her voice tried to be friendly. "That's wonderful news. You must be so lucky." Lucky. The word landed like a stone. I had always wanted to be lucky in simple ways. A job that let me breathe, a class that I could pass without crying, a small apartment that did not leak when it rained. Lucky sounded different when people said it across a table like this. It sounded like a coin being flipped and someone else already catching it. Then my grandpa reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. It was thick. He slid it across the table to my mother instead of to me. I felt like the room had become a stage. No one moved. My mother took the envelope with both hands. Her fingers were pale. She opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet of paper. I could not see the words from where I sat, but I could see the paper trembling in her hands. My uncle leaned forward. "Is it a letter?" he asked. He sounded excited, like someone waiting for a prize. My aunt nodded. Noah made a small noise of interest. My mother read the page. Her eyes moved faster and faster. I watched her like I watched a pot on the stove, waiting for it to boil. Then she looked up. Her eyes met mine. In that look, I felt 1,000 small things. Fear, shame, something like sorrow. She closed the paper and put it back in the envelope. She did not hand it to me. "Emma," my grandpa said softly, "we thought it would be better to tell you in person. Family matters should be shared at the table." Family matters. The words wrapped around me like a net. I wanted to ask, why did no one tell me? Why am I the last to know? Why had the words trust fund been kept like a secret in a drawer? My mouth formed questions, but no sound came out. I felt very small. My aunt reached over and patted my hand. Her touch was light and practiced. I did not trust it fully. "We just wanted to surprise you," she said. Her voice sounded like satin. "It's a good surprise." I wanted to cry. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to run out into the night and breathe the cold air until it burned my lungs. But I stayed. I finished my chicken with a fork that felt heavier than it should. I watched my mother press her lips together as if she was trying to hold back something. After dessert, ice cream with caramel sauce, Grandpa stood up. He cleared his throat like he had something important to say. The family leaned in, like petals closing around a bee. He smiled at me, and then at my mother. "This matter will need some planning," he said. "But we will explain everything in the morning." In the morning. The words sounded gentle. They sounded like a promise. But they also sounded like a lock being shut for the night. I wanted to stand up and tell everyone that if this was a test, I did not want to take it. I wanted to tell them that I had worked hard, and I did not need a secret to make me worthy. But I did not say anything. I went back to my apartment that night with my bag and boots waiting by the door. I thought of the envelope on the table. I thought of my mother's hands. I thought of the way people smiled in different ways. That night, I could not sleep. I turned the page of my life in my head like a book. I thought about my childhood. I thought about when I was 8 and Grandpa had taken me to the carousel and let me win a small goldfish at a fair. I remembered him feeding ducks with stale bread on a summer day. I remembered him teaching me how to change a tire when I was 19 and my car broke down on the highway. He had always been a quiet teacher. He had always been kind in small ways. But he had also been a man who made plans without telling me. He had always been the kind of person who crossed a room and decided things. That night his decision made me feel like a character in a play who had not known the lines. A trust fund felt like someone else's script being written for me without my voice. The next morning my phone rang early. It was my mother. Her voice was thin. "They want to meet at the lawyer's office," she said. "Grandpa says he will explain everything there. Can you come?" I agreed. I put on my coat. I fed Boots a bowl of tuna. He purred like he always did when I left. He did not know the kind of world I had stepped into. He only knew that his bowl was full and the bed was warm. At the lawyer's office, the walls smelled like coffee. The chair felt firm. I sat in the middle like someone waiting to be scored. The lawyer, Mr. Bennett, had a friendly face that tried to seem kind. He had glasses that moved when he talked. He spoke in a way that made big words sound small. He explained that a trust fund had been set up years ago by my grandfather's own father, my great-grandfather. He described legal words that I half understood. He said things like beneficiary, principal, and conditions. My mother listened and nodded. Her fingers gripped her purse. She answered questions in short sentences. She said she had known about the trust, but that Grandpa had asked her not to tell me. She said it had been complicated. She looked at me with a softness that made my teeth ache. "Why didn't you tell me?" I said, but the words felt like stones thrown into a deep well. My mother sighed. "Emma," she said, "your grandfather wanted to protect you. He thought it was better that you focused on your life without the heavy hand of money. He was worried it would change you." Change me? The sentence stung. I wanted to ask what kind of change she was afraid of. Was she afraid I would stop working? Was she afraid I would forget how to be kind? Was she afraid the people I loved would look at me differently? But when I opened my mouth, the words came out softer. "I would have rather known," I said. Mr. Bennett slid a paper across the table. It had clean lines and a neat signature. "The trust has conditions," he said. "Your grandfather has set rules. We must read them together." I felt like I had stepped into a room with invisible bars. Rules meant limits. Limits meant not being free. I took the paper and read. The words were plain but heavy. The trust would give money if I finished college, if I stayed away from bad company, if I worked steadily. It sounded like a list of things my grandfather thought made a person good. He wanted to shape me even from afar. He wanted to decide what I should do to earn the money he had planned before I was even old enough to open my first bank account. I left the lawyer's office staring at the pavement. My mother hugged me in a way that felt both warm and small. She whispered that Grandpa was a complicated man who loved in his own way. I wanted to hit something. I wanted to shout that love should not come with rules like handcuffs. But I did not shout. I went home and made coffee and sat at my little kitchen table and read the trust paper again. Days passed. People called and wrote. Friends asked if I would get a lot of money. Strangers at work heard whispers and tilted their heads like birds. My aunt kept visiting with casseroles and smiling too wide. My uncle called to tell me about stocks and real estate, as if I were a board game. My mother grew quieter. She stopped coming over as often. When she did, she spoke in smaller pieces, like she was saving her words for something large. Then something happened that felt sharp and sudden. One evening I came home early from my second job. The apartment door was open. Boots lay on the floor like a small dark question. There was a note on the table. It had no name. It was folded carefully. Inside was a single line written in smudged ink. "We should talk. S." My heart hammered so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. S. Who was S? My mind jumped to people and faces like a tray of photos. My cousin? My friend? My aunt? My boss? I read the note again. "We should talk." My hands shook. I wanted to call someone. I wanted to run to my mother and hide behind her leg like I did when I was 5. But I stayed where I was. I waited. That was when Boots jumped up and knocked over a small jar. It rolled across the floor and broke with a loud crash. The sound made me jump. I felt a cold that was not outside but inside my chest. The apartment felt smaller. The light from the street lamp cut a soft square on the kitchen table. I realized then that this whole thing was bigger than an envelope at dinner. It was a trap with many doors. It was a story that had started before I knew how to read. I picked up the pieces of the jar slowly. Each piece felt like a small truth I had to gather. The note on the table, the mail that did not come, the phone calls that were not returned, they were all threads in a web I had not seen. I sat down on the floor and hugged Boots. He purred and looked at me like he knew everything was wrong, but he could not fix it. Outside, a car passed. The headlights cast a long shadow through my window. I pressed my forehead to my knees. I thought about Grandpa at the table asking, "Did you get the email about your trust fund?" I thought of my answer, the one I had given in front of everyone. No one ever told me I had one. I thought of the look on my mother's face when she read the paper. I thought of the lawyer's neat words and his neat signature. Then my phone buzzed. I froze. The name on the screen was unknown. The message said only, "Meet me at the river at midnight. Come alone." My breath stopped. The room felt very still. The lights on the street flickered. My heart felt like a drum being hit slowly. I read the message again. Midnight at the river. Alone. No name. No reason. Someone wanted to meet me in the dark by the water. My mind filled with images from movies, shadows, whispered deals, secret envelopes passed under coat sleeves. I thought of the trust, of Grandpa, of the lawyer's papers, of my mother's pale hands. I felt both afraid and strange, like a person standing at the edge of a cliff and not knowing whether to step back or forward. I wanted to call my mother. I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to run. But the note on the table and the message on the screen felt like a challenge. I had lived on careful choices for so long. This night felt like a decision that would push me into something new. I could say no and hide in my small, safe life. I could say yes and walk into a place where secrets waited to be opened. I thought of kindness. I thought of the way Grandpa used to feed ducks with stale bread and the way he would teach me to change a tire. I thought of how people sometimes protect others by keeping things a secret. I also thought of betrayal, the way people can hide things for their own reasons. I thought of revenge, the cold, tempting taste of making someone feel what you feel. But I also remembered to be kind, to be fair, to hold on to empathy even when my heart was angry. I stood up. I put on my coat. I picked up my keys. Boots meowed as if to say, "Don't go." I opened the door, and the night met me with wet air. The city lights looked like tiny stars on the river. My shoes made soft sounds on the pavement. I held my phone like a small lantern. When I reached the river, the bridge was empty. The water flowed quietly, like a thread pulling at the shore. The clock on my phone said 11:55. I leaned on the railing and watched the dark water and waited. My hands were cold. My breath made small clouds in the air. At 11:59, I saw a shadow move near the old boathouse. Someone was there. I could not see their face. They stepped closer. I could hear the soft shuffle of shoes on gravel. My phone buzzed again. A new message. Good. Don't be late. Follow the light. A single light shone from the boathouse, like a small sun. It cut a path across the water. I felt the air tighten around me. I wanted to turn back. I wanted to run home and make Boots a bowl of tuna and pretend the night was only a dream. But I did not. I tightened my coat and walked toward the light. As I stepped onto the pier, the boards creaked like the pages of an old book. The light flickered. The shadow moved faster. Someone called my name in a voice I knew, soft and low and full of things that had not been said at dinner. "Emma," the voice said. "You shouldn't have come alone." The voice was close. It smelled like cologne. It sounded like the person who had left the note on my table. I turned. The face in the light was not what I expected. It was not the lawyer. It was not my aunt. It was someone who smiled with half their face and held a phone in their hand like a small trophy. Before I could speak, a noise broke the quiet. A shout from the road, a car door slamming, footsteps running. The light in the boathouse went out for one long second and then burst back. In that small dark, something moved behind me. A hand touched my shoulder. A voice I loved whispered, "Emma, go now." I spun. The face in the light changed. My heart leapt into my throat. I felt the world tilt. And then a loud, bright sound split the night. It was an extreme sound, sharp, sudden, and impossible to ignore. The kind of sound that makes your blood run cold and your bones remember how to move. The light flared. I heard people shouting. A crashing noise came from the boathouse. The river swallowed the echo. I froze. For a moment, the world stopped like a pause in a song. Everyone's faces were lit by the boathouse light. The air smelled like wet wood and fear. My hands were empty, my pockets full of nothing but the phone and my apartment keys. I looked at the person who had been smiling. Their smile had turned to something else. My legs wanted to run, but my feet would not move. The night had changed. The message on my phone, the note on my table, Grandpa's question at dinner, everything had stepped into a new, harsher light. I did not know who to trust. I did not know who had planned this. I did not know what the trust fund really meant now. I only knew that something had happened that would not let me sleep easy again. The river kept moving. The boathouse door swung. Someone shouted my name. The words of that earlier dinner echoed in my mind. "Did you get the email about your trust fund?" I had said, "No one ever told me I had one." Now someone had told me. In the dark. With a loud sound. With a hand at my shoulder. With the river watching. I felt very small in a big, cold place. I reached for my phone. The screen glowed and showed another message. Don't trust the smiles. Meet me tomorrow at 10. Come alone. My breath came fast. My chest felt tight. I wanted to run. I wanted to hide. I wanted to throw the phone into the river and wash the night away. But I could not. I was already inside the story. The first chapter had closed with a noise that shook the whole night. The rest of the book waited for me to open it. I stood on the pier. My fingers trembled. The light of the boathouse swung like a slow heart. I swallowed hard. I knew this was only the beginning. The river carried on. The city hummed. The night held its secrets tight. The message on my phone blinked like a small pulse. I walked back toward the road. My shoes made soft, steady steps. The house in my bag felt heavier than it had any right to be. I thought about kindness and about revenge. I thought about how people hide things to protect and to control. I thought about how I would not let this story break me. I would learn. I would be careful. I would be kind, but I would not be simple. As the streetlight passed, I saw the shape of my own shadow on the pavement. It looked long and strange, like a person carrying an invisible suitcase. I kept walking. The chapter ended with a loud crash at the river. The questions piled up like stones. I had the first of them in my hand. Who sent the message? Who wanted me alone at midnight? Who had smiled at me in the light? And what did the trust really mean? I did not know the answers. I knew only that the night had opened a door I could not close. The rest of the story waited behind it. The night after the crash felt like a dress soaked in cold water. It clung to my skin and would not let go. I walked back to my apartment with my coat buttoned up to my chin. People in small groups whispered as I passed. A siren wailed far away, like a lonely animal. My phone buzzed again, but I did not answer. I put the phone face down on the table and tried to breathe slow. I could not stop thinking about the man who had smiled in the light. His smile had looked friendly, but the way he held his phone like a prize didn't feel right. His eyes had the kind of stare people use when they're used to getting what they want. When the boathouse door had crashed open and the bright sound split the night, everything had happened so fast. I had seen hands, shoes, a flash of something white. I had heard a voice I loved whisper, "Emma, go now." I had not known who the voice belonged to at that moment. I only knew it had saved me. The next morning I slept badly. Boots slept on my pillow and turned his head every time I breathed. I made coffee that tasted like paper and tried to read the trust papers again, but the words jumped. I thought about the note I had found on my table. We should talk. S. I thought about the message. Meet me at the river at midnight. Come alone. I thought about the message after the crash. Don't trust the smiles. Meet me tomorrow at 10. Come alone. 10 in the morning came like an alarm that would not stop. I left my apartment early. I walked to the small coffee shop near the courthouse because it was a public place and people were always moving through. It felt safer than an empty office. The windows were clean and bright. The barista, a young woman with blue hair and a nose ring, handed me a paper cup and a sympathetic look. I sat at a table by the window and watched people walk by like pages in a book. At 9:50, my phone buzzed. The message said, "Good. Table by the window. Wear the coat you had on last night." I felt my heart hit my ribs like someone knocking on a drum. I pulled my coat tighter. Who wrote the message? S. The note and the messages used the same single letter. Was S someone who wanted to help? Or someone who wanted to pull me into more trouble? At 9:55, a woman came in and sat at a nearby table. She was not young like me or old like my mother. She looked like someone who had learned hard lessons and now chose her words carefully. Her hair was short and dark. Her coat was plain but neat. She looked for a moment like my aunt, but not quite. When she saw me, she smiled in a small way and pointed to the table next to me. I watched her pick up a paper bag and place it in front of her. At 10 exactly, my phone buzzed again. The message said, "Look left." There was another note under it. "Trust no one who smiles too wide." My fingers went cold. I looked left, and the woman at the nearby table lifted her head and walked over. Emma Carter? She asked in a soft voice. She put both hands on the chair opposite me like she wanted to make a promise. My name is Sarah Boone. I used to be close to your grandfather's office. I'm retired now, but I still read the papers. Her voice was calm. It did not carry the kind of drama you hear in movies. It carried a steady truth. You're us, I said before I could stop myself. My voice sounded small and tired. She nodded once. Yes. I'm the S. She smiled, but it was a small, careful smile. It was not the wide kind the man at the river had used. It was the kind that said she had done this before and knew how dangerous things could be. She sipped a cup of coffee and then set it down. I sent the notes because I wanted you to be safe. I did not want you to be alone when things started moving. Who are you? I asked. How do you know about the trust? Why didn't anyone tell me? The questions fell like stones. I wanted answers that would make pieces of the night fit together. Sarah's eyes looked far away for a second. I knew your grandfather when he was young, she said. He worked with my husband. They built things together. Sometimes they made mistakes. Sometimes they tried to fix them. I kept an eye on the family for a long time because I thought it was the right thing to do. Mr. Carter made plans for his family, but he also hid things. He thought he was protecting people. Sometimes protection looks like silence. My hands clenched around the coffee cup until the paper crinkled. My mother knew, I said. She read the letter at dinner. Why would she not tell me? She was asked not to, Sarah said, and her voice was neither soft nor mean. It just was. People make promises to each other, and they keep them. Sometimes those promises protect people. Sometimes they hurt them. I can't explain everything yet, Emma. But I can tell you this. There are people who will smile to your face and push you aside the moment it's easy. That's what happened at the river, I said. Someone smiled and then... I could not finish the sentence because I still had the image of the bright sound and the boathouse door crashing open in my mind. Sarah leaned back. You were lucky, she said simply. Lucky and watchful. But luck runs out if you let it. You need help and you need to be careful. Your family might not be what you think. Her words hit me like a cold wind. It felt like the floor beneath me moved. My mind moved through the faces at dinner. My mother's soft smile, my aunt's practiced touch, my uncle's loud laugh. Were they part of a plan? Had they all known? I wanted to believe they had reasons. I wanted to believe they loved me. But Sarah's eyes told me that truth is not always simple. Why are you helping me? I asked. Why not go to the police? Sarah's face tightened for a moment. Because the police are helpful when crimes are clear. This is not clear yet. This is a family matter tangled with money and old promises. Police will see only documents. They will not see the ways people move when they are frightened. And sometimes, the police are not safe if powerful people want things to stay quiet. Her words made my stomach flip. The idea that police might not help felt heavy and unfair. I had always thought the police were there to fix broken things. Now, everything felt complicated, like a puzzle missing pieces. The woman across the table, the same woman I'd seen in the light, was at that moment laughing a little too loud at a joke with a man in a suit. Her smile was wide and bright like a studio light. I could see her from the corner of my eye. She looked like she belonged in a magazine. Her laugh cut across the shop and made people look up. I felt my throat close. Who is that? I asked Sarah quietly. She followed my glance. Her lips tightened. That is your aunt, she said. That is Sarah Bryant, your Aunt Sarah. She is good at parties and planting smiles. But be careful. Those smiles hide things. I don't want to scare you, Emma. I want you to be ready. My heart felt like it had been scooped out and put into a drawer. Aunt Sarah had sat at my side at dinner. She had patted my hand and called me lucky. She had been the one who said, "You must be so lucky." The image of her bright laugh at the river and now in the coffee shop made my stomach drop. I need to know more, I said. I need to know what Grandpa really planned and why Mom kept quiet. Sarah rubbed her forehead. We can dig. I can check records. I can ask quiet questions. I can find who signed papers and who wanted the trust to stay a secret. But it will not be pretty. People do ugly things for money. They make promises to hide things. They cut people out. You should be ready for more surprises. We spoke for an hour. Sarah told me things in pieces, like handing me small puzzle pieces one at a time. She told me about a letter that had arrived at the lawyer's office weeks ago, a letter that said the trust could be activated if certain people agreed. She told me there had been shadows in meetings where she had been, hints that not everyone was as kind as they looked. She told me my grandfather had been a complicated man who believed he could decide the shape of people's lives. After we talked, I left the coffee shop feeling both oddly lighter and heavier. Lighter because I had someone else who knew how to look for the truth. Heavier because the truth felt like a mountain I had to climb without rope. I walked home slowly, thinking about my mother's pale hands when she read the paper. I thought about the note on my table. I thought about Boots sleeping like nothing had happened. That evening, Aunt Sarah called. Her voice on the phone was sweet and measured. She asked about dinner plans and family games. She said she was sorry about the accident at the river and hoped I was okay. I listened to her voice and tried to imagine what it sounded like without the bright smile. It was hard to hear any danger in the hello. After I hung up, another message blinked on my phone. It was from an unknown number. The text said, "You are asking the wrong questions. The trust is not the prize you want. Walk away." My fingers trembled. Who was it that wanted me to walk away? Who thought I should be silent and small? The words felt like a trap. If I walked away, what would I lose? If I pressed on, what could I find? I decided I could not walk away. I had come this far. I had heard the bright sound at the river. I had seen the wide smiles. I had found the note on my table. I had met Sarah Boone, who had become my first real helper. I could feel the story tightening, like a rope around a wrist. I had to pull. That night, I left a small recorder on the kitchen table and pretended I had fallen asleep early. I wanted to catch the sound of voices in case someone thought I was not listening. I brewed a second pot of coffee and did not sleep. I reread the trust papers and underlined words like conditions and beneficiary and discretion. They sounded like rules a parent would write to shape a child, except this child was a grown woman, and the parent was a rich grandfather who had written rules long before his granddaughter knew she existed. At 2 a.m, there was a soft knock on my door. Boots woke and hissed. My heart thudded. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. It was my mother. Her face was white, and her hair was in a loose bun. She looked younger than I had seen her in weeks. Her hands trembled. She held a small envelope. Through the peephole, I could not see the words. I opened the door. She stepped inside like a person who had traveled a long road. Her voice was a whisper. "Emma," she said, "I did not want to keep secrets. I thought I was protecting you. But tonight I saw things, and I could not sleep. There is a file hidden in Grandpa's study. I took copies. I think you should see them." My mouth felt dry. "Why now?" I asked. She looked at the floor and then up. "Because I am tired of lies," she said. "Because I love you. Because I do not want you to be hurt." She handed me the envelope. Inside were photocopies of papers I had not seen. There were emails, receipts, and a page with a list of names. At the top of that list was a name I did not expect. Emma Carter. Below my name were other names, some I knew, some I did not. There were numbers and dates and tiny notes in Grandpa's handwriting. "Keep private. Do not tell Emma, for her good." My head spun. The pages felt heavy, like wet towels. I sat down on the couch and read until my eyes blurred. The papers suggested that my grandfather had planned more than money. He had also planned who would be trusted and who would not. He had made choices before I had a voice. He had given people parts to play. As I read, my mother sat on the arm of the couch and held my hand like she was holding a frayed rope. "I'm sorry," she said again and again. I thought I was doing the right thing. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask her why she had kept me in the dark. I wanted to tell her that protecting me by hiding things felt like a slow theft. But when I looked at her, I saw the lines on her face, and the worry in her eyes, and the way she had read the paper at dinner, like she had been trying to measure me with her hands. I could not be cruel. I had promised to be kind even when it hurt. We read through the files together until the sun slipped up and painted the kitchen table with light. The papers showed decisions and votes and secret meetings. The pages did not show why people smiled so wide at dinner or why someone had sent the notes. They were only small parts of a larger machine built by a man who liked to plan. At noon, my mother left with a small bag and a promise to be careful. She kissed my forehead like she was leaving a shield. I watched her go and thought about how people stay in webs because they love someone or because they are afraid. I felt both sympathy and anger all at once. The pieces were falling together, but the picture was not clear. That afternoon, I got another message. It was a photo. The photo showed the boathouse from the river. Someone had taken it from a distance. A red scarf was tied to the boathouse railing. The scarf looked familiar because I had seen it at dinner. Aunt Sarah had worn a red dress and a thin red scarf. Under the photo were 5 words, "You are close. Be careful tonight." My hands shook. I had thought I knew where things were headed, but I did not. I thought of the loud, bright sound at the river, the hand at my shoulder, the boat, the dark water. I thought about the car that had crashed in front of the cafe and the wide smiles that hid sharp edges. I had a list of questions and no map. As the sun fell, I put my keys in my pocket and walked to the window. I watched the city light up like a slow fire. I thought about revenge and what it would mean. I thought about being kind and staying true. I thought about not letting people steal my life by making decisions behind my back. At the last moment before I went to bed, my phone buzzed one more time. An unknown number sent a video. In the video, a black car drove slowly down a quiet street. The camera was close to the road. Then the car swerved hard and hit the sidewalk where a woman walked. The video blurred. Tires screamed. People shouted. The video ended with a close-up of a small red scarf fluttering on the sidewalk. My stomach dropped. The screen went dark. I felt like the world moved out from under me. The message had no words. There was only the small red scarf on the pavement. I sat very still. My heart beat fast. The chapter of the night had closed with a loud crash at the river. The day had given me papers and a friend named Sarah and a mother who finally handed me the truth. The chapter 1 was and now ended with a video of someone being hit near a sidewalk and a red scarf. A red scarf that looked like the one my aunt had worn. I did not know who had been hurt. I did not know if it had been on purpose or by accident. I only knew that the danger had grown louder and closer. Tomorrow would come with more questions. Tonight the city hummed and the lights blinked. I pressed my hand to my chest and felt the slow drum of my own life. The trust, the smiles, the papers, all weighted like coiled ropes. I closed my eyes and tried to imagine a place where people told the truth and kept promises without breaking hearts. I held on to that thought like a small, fragile thing. Then the phone buzzed again. Another message. Meet me at midnight. We need to talk. Come alone. My breath hitched. The story was not finished. The night was not over. Midnight came again like a shadow that knew my name. The message, meet me at midnight. We need to talk. Come alone, kept flashing in my head like a broken streetlight. I sat on my couch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at my phone. Boots slept on the floor, curled into a tiny ball, his tail wrapped around his nose. I envied him. He lived in a world where danger meant nothing more than an empty food bowl. I put on my coat and stepped into the hallway. The air smelled like dust and old carpet. I checked the lock twice, then walked toward the stairs. My footsteps echoed. The city outside hummed like a tired machine. Somewhere far away, a car alarm blared and then went silent again. I kept thinking about the red scarf in the video. The red scarf my aunt had worn at dinner. The video had ended with that scarf lying limp on the sidewalk. No blood. No body. No screaming faces. Just the car swerving, the sidewalk, the scarf. Someone had gotten hurt. But the message, you are close. Be careful tonight, felt like someone was warning me, not threatening me. I didn't know if my aunt had been the target or the messenger, or something else. I walked faster. The message said to come alone, but I already knew something important. Whenever someone says, come alone, it means they aren't alone. I learned that from growing up in a family full of whispers. The meetup point was the old public library, the one they shut down 2 years ago because the roof leaked. It sat at the edge of town like a forgotten grandfather. The windows were dark. The paint peeled like old paper. The streetlights flickered in front of it, throwing long shadows across the steps. I reached the front gate at 11:57 p.m. A cold wind blew my hair across my face. I held my phone tight. I waited. I counted every breath. 11:59 p.m. My phone buzzed. Back entrance. I walked along the side of the building. Leaves rustled. A stray cat darted across the path and vanished under a bush. The back entrance was an old metal door with chipped blue paint. A faint light glowed underneath it. My heart thudded. I pushed the door slowly. The hinge squeaked. The inside of the library was dark except for a single lamp on a table. The room smelled like dust and forgotten pages. Tall shelves cast long, thin shadows on the floor. Someone stood next to the table. Someone I recognized. My heart dropped. Mom. She turned around slowly. Her eyes looked tired and soft, like someone who had been crying for hours. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her hair was messy. She looked smaller than usual. Emma, she whispered. Thank you for coming. I walked forward, confused. You sent the message? Yes, she said softly. I didn't know how else to reach you, without being watched. I blinked. Watched? By who? She looked over her shoulder like she expected someone to jump out of the shadows. Your aunt. And others. You don't understand how deep this goes. My breath caught. Is Aunt Sarah okay? I saw the video. The red scarf. She shook her head fast. She's alive. The video was old. Someone sent it to frighten you, to confuse you, to pull you away from the truth. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, followed immediately by suspicion. Mom, what truth? She grabbed my hands. Your grandfather didn't just hide the trust fund. He hid something bigger, something dangerous. And now people want a piece of it. I frowned. Mom, what are you talking about? It's just money. No, she said sharply. Not just money. Influence. Power. Decisions. Her voice cracked. Emma, the trust fund was supposed to go to someone else first. Before you. My heartbeat echoed in my ears. Who? Her lips trembled. Your father. The air left my lungs. My father? I whispered. She nodded. Tears filled her eyes. Yes. He was supposed to receive it when he turned 25. But he never got the chance. Because he died, I said, my voice shaking. Yes, she whispered. And some people believe it wasn't an accident. My knees buckled. I grabbed the side of the table to steady myself. Mom, no. Grandpa told me it was a car accident. He said. She shook her head hard. He told you what he wanted you to believe. He told me the truth the night before your father died. He said your father was digging into the trust fund paperwork, asking the wrong questions. My whole body went cold. Mom, are you saying? Yes, she whispered, voice trembling. I think your grandfather knew something bad was coming. Maybe he didn't cause it. But he didn't stop it either. My chest felt like it was being squeezed. And now, she continued, wiping her tears, the same people who didn't want your father asking questions don't want you asking them either. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small notebook. This belonged to your father, she said. I kept it hidden for years. I couldn't give it to you until now. Until I knew you were ready. I opened the notebook slowly. Inside were scribbled notes, dates, amounts of money, questions circled in red ink, and one sentence written in big, shaky letters. Why is Emma's name on a document dated before she was even born? My breath caught. My name. On a document. Before I existed. The room felt like it tilted sideways. Mom, I whispered. Why? What does that mean? She reached for the notebook, but before she could speak, a loud crash exploded through the library. Glass shattered. Shelves rattled. My mother screamed and pulled me to the floor. Books fell across the room like rain. The lamp flickered and went out. Footsteps thundered at the back entrance. Several footsteps. Fast. Heavy. Angry. The metal door slammed shut behind them. We weren't alone. My mother grabbed my arm. "Emma, run." But before we could reach the hallway, a dark figure stepped in front of us. Tall. Broad shoulders. A hood pulled low. I froze. My mother gasped. "Please," she whispered to the shadow, her voice shaking. "Don't do this." The figure stepped closer. The light from the broken window fell on their face, and my heartbeat turned into a scream inside my chest. It was the same man who smiled at me at the river. The man who had told me not to come alone. The man who had stood under the lamp with a phone in his hand, like a trophy. He smirked at me now. "Emma," he said softly, "you just don't learn, do you?" My mother stepped between us, her voice trembling but fierce. "Stay away from her." He lifted something in his hand. Not a weapon. A phone. "Funny thing," he said, tapping the screen. "Your grandfather used to say that money makes people stupid, but in your case that made you curious." He took a step closer. My mother gripped my arm tighter. "You shouldn't have opened that notebook," he whispered. My blood turned to ice. Behind him, more footsteps entered. 3 figures. All wearing dark clothes. All blocking the exits. All silent. We were trapped. My mother pushed me behind her. "Emma, listen to me," she whispered fast, voice trembling. "If anything happens—" "Mom, no." "Run," she breathed. "Run, and don't look back." The man lifted his phone again, pointing it at me like a threat. "That notebook," he said, "is worth more than the trust fund. And now that you've seen it—" He stopped. Smiled. "You're part of the game." Then one of the figures behind him shoved a bookshelf hard. It toppled. It fell toward us. A loud crash shook the whole room. Dust exploded in the air. I screamed. My mother grabbed me. We fell backward just as the shelf slammed into the table where the notebook had been. Books flew everywhere. The lamp shattered on the floor. My mother dragged me across the carpet, coughing, choking on dust, trying to pull me toward the far hallway, but another shadow stepped into view, blocking the exit. We were surrounded. The man with the phone leaned forward, smile growing. "Chapter 3 ends here, Emma," he said calmly. "But trust me." He tilted his head. "Your father stopped asking questions at this point." My mother lunged at him, trying to shove him back, but he snapped his fingers. The figures behind him moved. One reached into a bag, pulled out something. A folded piece of paper. He held it up. The man with the phone smiled wider. "Recognize this?" He tossed it to the floor at my feet. I picked it up with shaking hands. It was a document, with my name, and a date. A date from before I was even born. My mother gasped, covering her mouth. I looked up, and the man whispered, "Now you finally understand why you were never supposed to find out." Then he dropped another bomb. "Your grandfather didn't hide the trust fund from you. He leaned close. He hid you from the trust fund. Before I could react, before I could speak." He snapped his fingers again. The figure behind him reached into their coat, pulled something out. A lit match. The flame flickered. Bright. Dangerous. Too close to the papers. Too close to the notebook. Too close to us. My mother's eyes widened. "No, don't." The man smiled and dropped the match. Onto the table. Onto the notebook. Onto the only truth my father had left behind. The flame caught instantly. The notebook burst into fire. The room filled with orange light. My mother screamed. I lunged forward, but the man pushed me back with one hand. "Too late," he whispered. "The truth burns tonight." The flames spread across the table. The documents curled. The heat grew. Smoke filled my lungs. The fire roared like an animal hungry for secrets. The shadows behind him stepped back toward the exits. The man looked at me one last time. "Midnight meetings," he said, "always and the same way." Then he stepped back into the darkness. A door slammed. The figures vanished. The fire grew. My mother grabbed my arm. Emma, we need to get out now. We ran toward the only open hallway. Behind us, the flames swallowed the notebook. The papers turned black. The truth burned. We sprinted through the dark, smoke-filled hall. The fire chased us like a living thing. My mother coughed hard. Keep going. I held her hand. The smoke stung my eyes. The hallway shook as something heavy collapsed behind us. The flames roared louder. The entire library was turning into a furnace. And just as we reached the final exit, as my hand reached for the door handle, an enormous crash echoed behind us. The ceiling above the reading room caved in. Fire and debris exploded outward. The force knocked us both forward onto the cold pavement outside. I gasped for air. My mother coughed violently, grabbing her chest. The library behind us burned like a giant torch. Everything inside, the notebook, the papers, the table, the evidence, was gone. I crawled toward my mother. Mom, are you okay? She nodded weakly. I'm fine. We need to leave before they come back. But before she could finish her sentence, a black car screeched to a stop at the curb. The back door swung open. A familiar voice shouted, Emma, get in. Now. I turned around and froze. It was someone I never expected to see again. Someone I thought had left my life years ago. My father's brother. My uncle. Jack. His voice cracked like thunder. Get in. They're coming back. Behind us, the burning building groaned, sending sparks into the sky. In front of us, my uncle's car engine roared. My mother clutched my arm, eyes wide with fear. Emma, she whispered, we have to choose. The flames behind us grew louder. Footsteps echoed somewhere in the shadows. My uncle leaned out of the car window, shouting again. Emma, now! The fire behind us roared like a monster with no face. The glass windows of the old library cracked and burst as flames crawled across the roof. Smoke curled into the night sky like black ribbons. My mother was still coughing, bent over, one hand pressed to her chest. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. The black car idling in front of us gleamed under the streetlights. My Uncle Jack, my father's brother, was leaning out the window, shouting, Emma, we don't have time. Get in. My mind was spinning. I hadn't seen Uncle Jack in years. And when I last saw him, I was too young to understand why he'd disappeared from our lives. He had been close to my father. Too close, according to Grandpa. They used to argue behind closed doors when they thought no one was listening. My mother once said Jack blamed the family for my father's death. Now he was back. And he looked furious. He banged on the outside of the car. Now, Emma. Behind us, I heard footsteps. Heavy, rapid, coming through the shadows. My mother grabbed my arm. Emma, go. Mom, we go together? She nodded quickly, wiping soot from her cheek. Yes, but move. Please. We ran. I pulled my mother toward the car. My legs felt weak and heavy, like they didn't want to obey me. The heat from the burning library licked my back. The ground vibrated as another beam fell inside. We reached the car and threw ourselves into the back seat. Uncle Jack slammed his foot on the gas before the door, even fully closed. The tires screeched. The car shot forward like an arrow. In the rear window, two dark figures appeared at the library's side entrance. Too late. We were gone. Inside the car, everything smelled like smoke and fear. I held my mother's hand as she coughed into her sleeve. Her breathing was shaky, but she squeezed my fingers to show she was still with me. Uncle Jack kept his eyes glued to the road. His jaw was tight. His hair, once dark, was now sprinkled with gray. But his voice was exactly how I remembered it. Tough, urgent, and honest. Emma, he said, not looking back, you've been dragged into something you weren't supposed to touch. Not yet. I swallowed. Dragged into what? He took a sharp turn, almost too sharp. I grabbed the seat. Your father's unfinished business. My throat dried. My father, he didn't just die in a car accident, did he? Jack didn't answer. My mother looked at him. Her voice trembled. Jack, please don't. No, he snapped. She deserves the truth. I felt the air in the car go sharp. Jack slowed down as we reached a quiet road lined with old warehouses. He finally looked at me through the rearview mirror. Your father didn't die by accident, he said. He was pushed off the road. The world tilted. My vision blurred. I felt like I wasn't breathing. My mother covered her face with her hands. Jack, please. He didn't stop. Your father found out something about the trust fund. Something dangerous. Something about your place in it. My place. I whispered. Jack nodded. Yes. Grandpa didn't hide the trust fund from you. He hid you from it. That doesn't make sense, I said, voice cracking. Jack's eyes were dark in the mirror. It will. He pulled the car into an old warehouse parking lot. It was abandoned. No lights. No people. Just silence. My mother grabbed my hand tightly as Jack turned off the engine. The sudden quiet was painful. Jack twisted in his seat to face me fully. Emma, listen carefully. The trust fund was originally meant for 3 people. 3? I asked. Yes, Jack said. Your father. Me. And someone else. My chest tightened. Who? Jack looked at my mother. Her face fell. She whispered, Emma, the 3rd person was you. My stomach dropped. But I wasn't even born, I said. Jack nodded. Exactly. That's what your father couldn't understand. Your name was placed on documents before you existed. As if someone knew about you far too early. A chill ran through me. Someone forged it, I whispered. Jack shook his head. No. Someone planned it. Planned my life. Before I even lived it? I felt sick. Why? I asked. Why would someone do that? Jack opened the glove compartment and pulled out a small recorder. He pressed play. A faint voice crackled through the speaker. A voice I recognized. My father. Jack. I don't know how to explain this. Something's wrong. Emma's name, it's everywhere. Documents I've never seen. Dates that make no sense. I think. The recording cut. I stared at the recorder, my chest tight. That was left on my phone, Jack said. The day before he died. The tears I'd been holding finally spilled. My mother hugged me tightly. I didn't want you to grow up with fear, she whispered. I thought burying it was better. Jack sighed. But burying secrets only makes them grow. I wiped my eyes. The man at the river, who is he? Why burn the notebook? Jack's jaw tightened. He works for the same people who tried to stop your father. I felt a cold tremble run down my arms. My father had been digging into the trust fund, and now I was doing the same. No wonder the man said, your father stopped asking questions at this point. My blood ran cold remembering that moment. I looked at Jack. What did my father find? Jack didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a small scrap of paper. Folded. Old. Torn at the edges. He handed it to me. I unfolded it slowly. It was a page from my father's handwriting. And it said, the real trust isn't money. It's the information. Underneath that line was a single sentence circled many times. They're hiding who Emma really is. My heart stopped. My mother gasped and covered her mouth. I whispered, who I really am? Jack nodded solemnly. Yes, Emma. And to find that answer, we need to go somewhere your grandfather never wanted us to go. Where? I breathed. Jack pointed toward the far end of the dark warehouse district. My skin prickled. He wasn't pointing toward a building. He was pointing toward a tunnel entrance, hidden behind piles of old crates. An underground access tunnel. My mother whispered, Jack, please tell me you're not planning to. We have to, he said. It's the only way. The only way to what? I asked. Jack turned to me, eyes fierce and filled with something like fear and determination mixed together. To find the original documents your father found, he said. The ones that were never supposed to see daylight. He paused. And the ones your grandfather hid beneath the city. My blood ran cold. The truth, Jack said quietly, is under there. I stared at the tunnel. A dark mouth. A place where secrets lived. My heart pounded. My mind raced. But then,
My grandfather had faced business wars, lawsuits, betrayals. He never scared easily. What did he say? I asked. Noah hugged himself. He said, "If Emma finds out, it all falls apart." My mother let out a shaky breath. I felt something cold wrap around my spine. What falls apart, Noah? He whispered the answer. Everything. I plugged the USB into my phone using the small adapter I always carried for work. A folder popped up immediately. Just one folder. Labeled Emma before. My stomach twisted. I opened it. Inside were documents. Dozens of them. PDF scans. Old letters. Typed reports. Legal papers. Notes written in Grandpa's handwriting. My mother leaned closer. Noah scooted in too. I opened the first document. A birth certificate. My birth certificate. Only. The father's name was blank. My breath hitched. This isn't the certificate Mom showed me when I was little. My mom grabbed my wrist. Emma, listen, just listen. But I pulled my hand back. I opened the second document. It was a DNA test. My DNA. And another. And another. There were 4 tests. All done without my mother's knowledge. All done before I was even 1 year old. All confirming the same thing. I was not biologically related to my grandfather. Not even a little. My mother covered her face with both hands and let out a sound between a sob and a gasp. "Mom," I whispered. What is this?" She shook her head violently. "I didn't, Emma. I swear I didn't know he did these. I didn't know he was testing you. He never told me." "Why would he?" I choked out. "Why would my grandfather do 4 DNA tests on a baby?" I opened another file. A letter. Handwritten. My father's handwriting. "Dad, if you know something about Emma that you're not telling us, I need you to stop this. She is my daughter. I don't care what your papers say." My breath trembled. My mother whispered, "Your father loved you. Nothing would ever change that." But my hands were shaking. I opened the last document. A scanned page stamped by a hospital. And the room spun. Because suddenly it made sense. The reason my name was on trust fund documents before I was born. The reason men chased us. The reason the notebook was burned. The reason Grandpa was scared. I wasn't chosen for the trust fund. I was promised to it. Before I even existed. Because the trust wasn't money. It was inheritance of position. My grandfather had written my name down years before my mother even became pregnant. Not because he knew me, but because I wasn't supposed to belong to the Carter family. I whispered the truth out loud. I was adopted. My mother burst into tears. "No, Emma. No, you were always mine, always. Your father raised you. But biologically," I said quietly, staring at the papers, "I'm not a Carter." I scrolled down the document. And my heart nearly stopped. Because there, printed clearly, was the name of the biological mother. A young woman. 19. Deceased in a hospital the night I was born. And next to father. Confidential, sealed court order. No name. Just that. Sealed. My vision blurred. My mother whispered, "Emma, we thought it didn't matter. Your father loved you more than anything. He didn't care what the DNA said. But something else mattered. Something big. My grandfather had sealed those records. He had hidden them. He had inserted my name into trust documents before I ever took my first breath." "Mom," I said softly. "Why would he do that? Why hide I wasn't really a Carter?" She closed her eyes. Because finally, she knew the truth too. "Noah," I said, turning to him gently, "did Grandpa ever say anything else?" He nodded hesitantly. He said, "Emma has to stay protected. She can never know who her real father is." The room went ice cold. Oh, that was it. That was what the trust really protected. Not money. Not property. Not a legacy. A secret of blood. Someone dangerous was my biological father. Someone powerful. Someone Grandpa feared. And the trust fund wasn't inheritance. It was a shield. A shield meant to keep me hidden and protected from the one man Grandpa didn't want finding me. I took a shaky breath. Mom, do you know who he is? She looked at me with eyes full of pain. No, she whispered. I only know this, he was someone your father swore never to let near you. The walls of the tunnel felt like they were closing in. Before I could ask more, a noise slammed into the door. A loud metallic bang. We all jumped. Noah whimpered and grabbed my arm. My mother pulled him close. The banging came again. Louder. Closer. They had found us. The metal bolt rattled violently. Noah, my mother whispered. Give Emma the USB. Noah obeyed, placing the drive in my shaking hand. My mother cupped my face. Emma, listen to me. This is the truth your father died for. You can't let them take it. The door shook again. Dust fell from the ceiling. My heart raced. Mom, what do we do? She looked around the room frantically. Then she saw the maintenance hatch at the back of the room. A small square door low to the ground. Barely big enough for one person. She grabbed my shoulders. Emma, take Noah. Crawl through that hatch. It connects to the south tunnel. You can get out through the storm drain. I stared at her in horror. Mom, no. You're coming too. She shook her head hard. They won't follow a child. They won't hurt him. But they will take you from me if they get in here. Tears filled my eyes. I'm not leaving you. The door banged again. A hand punched through a weak panel. Fingers curled through the hole. My mother grabbed my face. I love you. Your father loved you. Go. Go. Another crash. The metal bolt bent. They were seconds from breaking in. I grabbed Noah's hand and crawled toward the hatch, sobbing. Emma, my mother called out. I turned. She smiled through tears. You are more than your blood. You are more than their secrets. You are mine. Then the door burst open. Men rushed inside. I screamed. My mother stood between them and us like a shield. Run, she shouted. Run. I pulled Noah through the hatch. The last thing I saw was my mother being grabbed, her scream echoing. And then the hatch slammed shut behind us. The tunnel was narrow and wet. Noah crawled in front of me, shaking. I held the USB so tightly it cut into my palm. We crawled for what felt like forever. Finally, we reached the storm drain. I pushed the grate. It budged. I pushed again. It popped open. Cold night air rushed over us. I climbed out first, then helped Noah out. We were behind an old storage building near the river. Far away, sirens wailed. Smoke from the library fire still drifted through the sky. I hugged Noah tightly. Are you okay? He nodded slowly. Emma, are they going to hurt Aunt Lisa? I won't let them, I whispered. I promise. Noah looked terrified, but also brave. We have the file, he whispered. But what do we do now? I stood up slowly, gripping the USB. This tiny silver drive held the truth of my entire life. Why Grandpa hid me. Why my father died. Why dangerous men chased us. Who my real father was. What the trust fund really protected. Everything. I looked at the river. The city lights reflected on the water like broken stars. I looked at Noah. At the tunnel. At the USB. At the dark world behind us. My mother had given herself up to buy us time. Jack had been taken. My father had died. All for this truth. No more running. No more hiding. I wiped my tears and took a steady breath. We finish what Dad started, I said softly. We expose everything. Noah nodded. And we get Mom back. A voice behind us made both of us jump. Good, it said quietly. Then you're going to need my help. I spun around. And my breath caught. Standing in the shadows beneath the bridge was Aunt Sarah. Her red scarf tied around her wrist like a bandage. But not angry. Not smiling. Just serious. And with her, a man in a worn jacket with a bruised eye. My heart nearly stopped. Jack. I whispered. He nodded once, wincing. They didn't get me, kiddo. Emotion hit me hard. Aunt Sarah stepped forward. Let's end this, she said. All of us. I hugged Noah closer, held the USB tight, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt hope. The truth was finally in our hands, and we were done being hunted. This was our turn to fight back. Our turn to expose every lie. Our turn to break the legacy of secrets. And together, we walked into the night, toward the light of a future that would finally be ours.